You're listening to the Goof and Grump podcast, where a couple nerds talk all things tabletop role-playing. Here we reflect on our experience looking for wisdom to make us better players at the table, and hope to give you something to bring back to yours. This episode, we're rehashing the big 16-person, 2-table Shadowdark game that we ran in August of this year. My name is Alex Akis. I'm joined by my friend James Ekdahl, and we are going to talk about this game that we ran. For my birthday, we rented a house, and we had 16 players, 2 tables of 8, and we designed and executed 2 Shadowdark mini-adventures, and then all 16 players combined for the finale, which was a ritual to revive the Witch Queen Renessa against the evil Duke. I'm really excited to hear what you have to say, James, about running your table, because I thoroughly enjoyed running my side. It did not go as planned, of course.
It never does.
Never does. But I thought there was enough left on the table that the game could have just kept going. But also because we had a good time constraint, players felt like they had to get shit done. And they did. So I'd like to start with character generation and the beginning of the game. So I had spent probably like days, if not weeks, on a map that I used for like 30 seconds during the night, and I only printed out 1 instead of 2, like a jackass, to give the premise. But during character generation, I had this whole big idea where I was going to have a full-blown like overview, and I was going to walk really slowly through it for everybody. And then I don't know what happened. Like none of that shit happened. We just had the veteran players, like the players took care of each other, and it was really cool to see. Like the veteran players just jumped in and started making characters and then helping the newer players. So how did that go at your table?
About the same. I think it was a little bit. The hour but we had beforehand was kind of a slow roll into it. So some people sat down and started making their characters right away, putting pencil to paper, rolling the dice, getting their stat blocks and stuff. Other people were a little bit slower to the take, or like getting prepared, mentally to sit down for a couple hours and play something that they've never played before. So it was a good mix. I'm trying to think of like the biggest like sticking points I think during that process was because I know that we worked together on kind of guidance for new players, like a little pamphlet, if you will. And that was nice. I really liked the product, kind of like, hey, you're a thief, you do sneaky things, and you're the scout of the party, and you kind of remind them or give them like guidance on how to play. And I think that's good. But at the end of the day, the thing that I forgot about this Shadowdark, kind of the recommended thing is you roll your stats and then you figure out what class you are. You're like, well, I was thinking about doing sneaky stuff, or like that's how I feel today, but I got an 8 dexterity or 4.
Yep.
So it's like, okay, what can't do that new plan, which I think happened to some of the players.
Yeah, but so this is one of the problems with the way I did that is because I fully intended to just let players assign stats because we had a mixture of people that were so brand new they'd never played a TTRPG before. And I wanted the option for grizzled veterans to like pick a priest, which I'm pretty sure one or two of them did.
Yeah.
We still had like 3/4 of both parties were thieves.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, and that was one of the things I wanted to touch on was like, I did this 100% randomized. I did not put my thumb on the scale, but you got 90% of the veterans at your table. I got 90% of the noobs and 1 veteran. In retrospect, I don't hate that. I really want to know how this game went with you, because you had mostly veterans with 1 new person, I think.
On that note, specifically like the veterans, right? Like there were some things which were telegraphed, which you put into the dungeon, which they know better. Mm-hmm. And so they avoid it, but it leads to this thing at the end of the game where they're like, yo, where are our magic items? And I was like, well, there was a treasure room, which you completely avoided because you correctly sniffed out the trap, right? It was a trap, but like it was kind of just a game of chance. At what point will you spring it? Are you gonna try to get like all 9 items off the pedestal, or are you just gonna get a couple and see what they are, right? But they never even like took the chance to roll on the table because they knew better. And I think you dangle that in front of new players, and they're like, no, I'm definitely taking that.
I think so. I also think like I wonder if that comes in the calculus of the players. Like they're like, well, Alex designed this bullshit, so immediately it's going to be problematic. Whereas like I painstakingly went out of my way to make it so that it would be a chance to trip the trap, not just automatically trip the trap. But like,
correct.
I don't know that I've ever done that before. I spent more time making it better, but they never saw it.
Yeah, in most of the games that you've run for, if it looks like a trap, trap and it smells like a trap. It
It's a
probably
trap.
is, and it for sure is.
Yes.
And it might be lethal. So we'll see.
Yeah, and at my table also they had the same. I did have a trap that was like that. That was not a chance. It was just going to trigger if you grabbed the magic item. My group immediately they were like, "We're not fucking around with this." They went upstairs above where the trap was because they figured out the whole room was basically the trap. I had to reward them just allowing access to the inner workings of the trap, and they completely bypassed the fucking thing.
That's probably my main takeaway or observation of playing this. Like, you play with the veterans, they play carefully as if they may come back. And, over the next 3 weeks, we're going to visit this dungeon and we're going to clear it out. And every last room will be discovered. Every last monster will be killed. And then we're going to move on to the next one, right? Where this is not that at all. It's the one shot where we go in and we have one job, which is to, get this orb. And we're going to leave and we'll never come back, right? Mm-hmm. And differently, like, played it that way. You had the blood lock at the ceiling stairs, right? So when they came out, I was like, yeah, that's shut forever now, right? Mm-hmm. You have to figure out another way to get back in.
Pyramid of the Death Shaper was the adventure that you ran, and mine was the Buried Chapter House of the Assassin. And we basically made it so that the premise was there was a witch queen that was stuck in stasis, and she needed 2 magic items to be revived so that she could save the realm. You were going to run one of the dungeons. I was going to run one of the other dungeons, but we were going to know which dungeons we were running, but the players were not going to know which one they were going into, which was, I thought it was cool. I liked the party assignment thing where like each player had a card of a different suit based on their class. Then we shuffled them up and then divvied up the tables. And I thought that was quick and dirty. I would definitely do that again if we ever run another 2-table game like this. I guess the next thing that I wanted to like kind of ask you about was what were some memorable moments from running the game at your table?
So there's a couple memorable things that I think about when I think about this encounter in general, or like just the game. And I think having the veteran players definitely like flavors some of that, because they have a better grasp on, what you can and can't do, what might work and what might not. Really good example of this is the big bad at the end, which I've been telegraphing for, 30 minutes as they build up to it, right? He's in this sarcophagus in the middle of the room. And they basically did like, the Indiana Jones hot swap sort of thing, where they popped the lid, grabbed the thing, and then popped the lid back on, like it had it sealed. So, and I modified what was in the original booklet that you gave me, because I had actually messed something up. So you had the dead guard with the scarab, brooch that opens the tomb, right? When I read it, or when we were playing it, I was like, oh, this opens the door to the tomb.
Oh, I actually like that.
And so, and that's what I did, right? But then I made it a puzzle where each door, because there were 4 in the room, had one on the inside, right? And so you had to figure out how to get it, like, as they pull each one out, the door would close, right?
You didn't mess that up. That sounds better than what I had.
so the idea, right, is that you put all 4 of them in the sarcophagus, and it unlocks, and now you can open it.
Very cool.
Right? So it telegraphs this thing that is like, it's something very dangerous, something very precious, should not be opened lightly, is in here. And as the veteran players are like, yeah, we're not dealing with that at all. So they basically, have the barbarian who rolls like a 18 or something on his strength roll to, at this level 1 character, right? And he's like, okay, well, I'd like to contested strength roll, like shut the lid on the thing. And I'm like, all right, well, it seems like a thing you should be able to do, so let's try it out. Right.
Yeah, no, I like it.
And he succeeds and they shut it in. So they don't even really encounter the last boss. So I kind of improvised there instead. And you had built in this ability where you could raise the dead. They were like roaming skeletons and one of the things, which they had encountered some, and they killed them in another room nearby. So the way that I had that work then, to create some pressure to get out of the room, because at this point also your table was about finished, and we're just starting the last encounter here. So what I did is I changed it then, and I said, okay, at the beginning of every round, we're going to get, 1d4 plus 2 skeletons. We'll start in the room next to the party, and, they're just going to keep coming in, right? So you had this whistle on like the jawbone of the lich thing, the Death Shaper, right? And it would wake all these things. But I said instead what it does is just, it's like an alarm. And so what you created is, and this is kind of like timed escape. Like you have to get out of the dungeon and you have to get out quickly or you will be overwhelmed, right?
Yeah.
Because the skeletons, they're skeletons. They're not extremely threatening.
But they will kill a whole bunch of level 1 players, right?
Right, you will lose on action economy eventually, right? Because if I'm generating potentially, well, let's say an average of like 3 every turn, your party will be outnumbered if you aren't all destroying them and you have to move towards the exit. So I thought it was good. It did what it wanted, what I needed it to do, which was get them out of the dungeon quickly. And they had already like kind of explored. They kind of made a beeline straight down to the way that I had pitched that story. Right, there was the scouts of the Duke's men down there, right, and they had a skirmish with a couple of the guards. They met our scouts,
The Mikran scouts, yes.
the Mikran scouts. Yeah, so they had a skirmish and they were able to follow a kind of blood trail down to where the one guard had expired from his wounds, right, and he had the scarab brooch. There were two others nearby, and they'd set up some fancy crossbow traps and stuff, but they didn't go that way. So they skirted that. Unfortunately, those gentlemen were sealed in the tomb with the skeletons. So
Oh, well, they're probably fucked.
it's probably not good news for them. But anyway, memorable because the last encounter was supposed to be, the big boss showdown, but it ended up not really being that. It was a get out, the Indiana Jones boulder that's coming down the pipe, and we got to figure this out. We're going to figure it out now. And I thought that actually played out pretty well.
Honestly, it sounds really good. And it sounds like you successfully met the vibe. Like you and I had kind of like reviewed beforehand what I was going for. And it sounds like you met the goals of everything that was here, because it wasn't supposed to be a fight to the death with the Death Shaper coming out of the sarcophagus. Like it was like they could fight him, try to get the jawbone off of him, or they could, run. And the waves of skeletons, I love that, because that creates like the constant pressure to be like, you really shouldn't fucking stay. You should go. and so
it's time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that especially the veteran players at your table, I can just imagine like them keying into each other, being like, we got to fucking go. We got to go. We got to go, which sounds really good, because I don't know that I've successfully designed things in the past that had these kinds of optionality to them, which I want to get into. But before we go balls deep into design, I wanted to give you like a mirror of what was happening at my table while that was going down. So my table, we started out similarly where they met with some Mikran scouts, but I had the scouts meet them outside the village where the entrance to the buried chapter house was. Basically, it was a decrepit village, and they had to go down a well shaft in order to get into the actual Assassin's Guild. And the Assassin's Guild was actually a repurposed, abandoned wizard's alchemical, like hidey hole, right? So a wizard was using this for alchemical experimentation at some point, long in the past. They immediately start trying to get the scouts to like take bullets for them and to do whatever. Like I described one of the scouts as missing an arm, and they're like trying to give him shit. They're like, just suck it up, buddy. I'm like, okay, somebody rolled to try to convince these guys of something. And they made some high charisma roll. So I was like, okay, they will continue to bleed out, but they'll wait at the entrance and they'll secure it for you guys. I had some newer players, so I had to kind of massage getting them into some kind of organizational orientation. They had 4 thieves, so 1 or 2 of the thieves just decided they were going to be the scout. They started reaching out into the dungeon, having to light the torches, having to like kind of sneak around, and immediately they find a trap. And the trap is like a door that swings down into some water. Basically, the leader of the Assassin's Guild had an escape route from the room that he was staying in to like take a secret exit and then use the water to like escape. And so this is important only because they get past this trap, they disarm it. Some of the thieves get oriented with their abilities and skill sets, and they have a choice. They can either go into this big ass cave, or they can keep going forward to a regular wooden door built into the rock wall. And there's muffled, deep voices arguing about something behind the wall. So they go into the cave and they find a giant spider. But the giant spider doesn't immediately try to fight them or engage them. It just kind of scuttles away and tries to defend the escape route for the leader. The spider probably would have fucked him up pretty good if they had actually fought him. But one of the players, my wife, actually wanted to go befriend the spider and try to ride it around. But the veteran player, Tom, he was not having that shit. He was like, we have to stick together. This is a trap. We're all going to die. They eventually coalesced and they decided to go into the hall north of there, bypassing the room with the argument in it. So then they go into a room that is the alchemical experimentation room. There's books, there's like alchemical supplies, and there's like beakers and all kinds of bullshit. One of the wizards, she might have been the only wizard playing, but she does an experimentation, and I had created a chem reaction chart where if she failed the int check by more than 5, it was going to do something bad. But she passed it. She makes a couple vials of acid, and then they find a staircase going up. They decided they don't want to explore another floor without seeing what's going on here, so then they go into the room of the argument. They sneak in, and it turns out that inside that room are representatives of the Assassin's Guild, beastmen thieves. They're like spider humanoids. And then the Duke's men, basically the bad guy version of the Micran Scouts, they're in there, and they're arguing about taking care of the target magic item, which is this long mace called Skiptro, the bludgeon of the Makari. It's supposed to combine with the orb that your party is going for.
Right.
They're arguing about keeping it safe, and they're arguing about how much money the Duke is paying. And so what does the party do? The party walks in and starts stomping everybody. It just starts killing people. A morale check gets rolled pretty quick. And then they kill everybody except one of the Duke's men. And then the Duke's man like puts his hands up and he's like, don't kill me, please. I will tell you anything you want, and then I will leave and everything will be fine. So from this guy, they get out of him that there's a guy named Greco that's in a cage upstairs. The party's like, well, we don't give a fuck about that. Who is that? And then they ask him about the magic item. And the magic item is just northwest on the map. It's in a room all by itself. And they're like, okay, he's like, you're going to let me go, right? So my wife and my buddy Christian, at the same time, they murder this guy. And so I poke them because these are two brand new players, have never played a game like this before, and they've just committed their first war crime. I just kind of massage the table to get them to talk, and they spend the next like 10, 15 minutes just talking about what they're doing, why they had to kill that guy. They had to kill that guy, in quotation mark, before they move on to the actual treasure item itself. They go to this room, and it's just the long mace is sitting on a pedestal in a room by itself. And of course, immediately, everyone's apprehensive. It is obviously a trap. The way the trap is supposed to work is like Indiana Jones trap, where you lift the mace off of the central column, a door, like a slab of rock, slams into place in place of the door, and then the ceiling comes down and crushes everyone in the room. But there is an opening in the ceiling that just basically encompasses around the central column that would have the mace on it. So they kind of look into all this. They kind of see, they look through the door jamb. They see the stone slab is supposed to fall. They decide, we're not stepping foot in this fucking room. Let's go upstairs and see this thing falls into place. So obviously there must be something upstairs. So I originally had not thought of that and put that into the location that they went to, but the location was blank. So I basically rewarded that logical follow-on by saying, yes, you go upstairs and there's this massive stone block with an opening in the center. There's pulleys, gears, and ropes keeping this thing aloft. And then one of the players, your wife, actually, she decided she was feeling risky because she was exhausted and like ready to call it quits for the night.
Yeah.
So she takes a chance and goes down in through the center of the column, like she rappels down via rope, and she gets the item. And as soon as she does, the entire room starts to like sink into this other room. Now, because she was looking for an exit, I killed off her character, like basically the falling of the stone, snapped her neck while she was holding onto the thing. So her corpse comes up holding the magic item, and then one of the other players takes it. An interesting exit for a brand new player, but she seemed to have a good time. I don't know. They're trying to decide, do we just leave with this fucking thing or we go see what's up with Greco? Now, unbeknownst to them, the next room over was the room that had the Iron Spider, who was the leader of the Assassin's Guild. They did not care about the Assassin's Guild. They were like, I don't give a shit about this. But they were interested in Greco because he was mentioned and like there was weirdness around him. So they go find Greco. They don't know that he is actually a were-rat. And when they find him, he is in a cage made out of silver bars, silver lock. And I told them if they failed to pick the lock twice, it would be broken and unusable because it's like made out of soft metal. I pulled some shit out of my ass. But also in that room, though, I wanted to give them the opportunity to find another magic item. So I had spitballed this idea where the Assassin's Guild was using magic items to test out on Greco to just see how much damage he could take before he would die. Because as a were-rat, he only takes damage from magical sources. So they talk to Greco. Greco refuses to tell them what he is, but they just assume he's a werewolf because he's in a silver cage. And then he just wants to kill Duke's men, and he wants to kill Assassin's Guild guys. So they convince him to go with them, and they get the magic item out of the box, and then they skedaddle. So basically, they probably explored like 4 to 5 rooms. I had like 13 or 14 rooms. I also had secret rooms. I had treasure rooms. The Iron Spider had a key on him that would open up a whole room full of treasure and shit, but they were like, we got what we need. Get the fuck out of here. Bringing this back to what happened at your table, I had kind of planted these 2 optional things for the final battle in both adventures. One was Greco, because he's a were-rat, and if he's on their side and he can only take damage from magical shit, only the Duke is going to be able to hurt him. That's how they used him in the end. They used him as a tank towards the doors. And then the whistle in your adventure was intended, if they took that as an optional magic item, once people started dying at the front of the room, they could blow the whistle and then revive them all and get like a free round of like not having to fuck with Duke's men coming at them at all. Interesting, because Tom, the veteran player at my table, actually asked me after the game was over. He's like, did you have something that would have been helpful for us in the end there in the other table's adventure? You know, he was just looking to give them shit, really. But I thought about it. I was like, yeah. Definitely. That's the vision of the final ritual. What I was going for was to make it so that both tables actually got their magic item and had the option of getting other stuff to help. And I was actually super surprised at how well the timing worked out. Both tables were ready to go to the ritual within like 15 minutes of each other, I think, right?
Yeah, it was pretty. I don't think you could ask for better.
Oh, no.
On a scale of like a 3-hour game or something, right? Like ending up that closely is like pretty much a miracle.
Yes, I had no expectations that it was going to be that close.
But also, I think credit to you, because at least I participated in several of the larger games that you've run. So we kind of had an understanding of how this stuff will go. We're not wasting time, party versus door. Or any of the common traps, right, that we can get into. We're not treating it like a precious, dungeon where everything in here is for experience, right? People aren't talking about it. We're thinking about it like a campaign where I must survive the night. Let's just have some fun, like throw some dice around and see what happens.
I think definitely the experience that we've had playing these bigger ass games, like it felt like we have a task. We know what we're here to do. Everybody, even the newer players, were like taking the premise serious enough where they were like, how do I just do the thing that I'm supposed to do? And that was all really enjoyable to me. I was like, this feels like everybody's kind of locked in, even though half the room had not actually played this kind of game before in their lives. It was really cool. Going all the way back to character gen, the character folio, did it help at your table? I feel like it helped at mine, but I'm curious about what you think.
I think definitely the little folio or like getting started helps. I think starting with the character sheets was a little like, you're 10 pages in before it's like, here's how you do it. Mm-hmm. Here's what you do. And so like, I might put that at the very front or just like as a first page and then maybe character sheets. It's like, okay, you're going to need one of these to do this, right? But like step by step on here, or like just have the character sheets separate, like in another pile, right? And it's just like the core, like 4 or 5 pages here that have the actual stuff for generating a character.
Because the version that I've released on itch, doesn't have any of the copywritten stuff out of Shadowdark, and it's just character sheets. So that might actually make a lot of sense to just separate it that way and then just make a cool character sheet folio. The art in this is just something I pulled out of my ass, but like we could make it more interesting and then make that like a cool artifact. And then the helper stuff that we just use in our personal games that is, has copywritten stuff in it that we can't sell or give away, whatever. We can't publish, but is super helpful when we're just running our own personal big ass games. Like I want to print copies of this stuff. I'm probably going to reorganize it after this conversation for sure, but I want to print copies of this stuff and like use it in Gen Con. I want to make another mini adventure and like, run it similarly. Man, I mean, that group, we could totally do the same thing where we break into 2 groups, but
shuffle some cards up and see what happens.
Could do. I don't know. That I think that group really likes to be all at the big ass table together. Like we regularly every year have 12 players in that fucking game. But
Yeah.
how did the stackable 3D printable indicators work for you? Because I found that shit was very helpful for me in keeping people straight.
Yeah, I think that was good. I just had some poker chips I used for monsters, right? Which pretty much just ended up being skeletons of variety A and variety B. But
Still good.
no need to distinguish them. Here's where they are at, and I didn't really measure things. It wasn't counting. It was a lot more vibes between like what's near and close and distance. But communication, like here's what you're gonna need to roll to do that, right? Because of X or Y. I don't think anyone had a problem with that.
No, I think the rules lend themselves to that kind of shit.
The biggest thing I think with keeping on the topic of character creation that I think I experienced as a hang up between several of the people was picking items. And I think if we're going to do this again, especially with very new players, you may just want to give them like, here's your starter kit. I know that's a little tricky because it's like, okay, you have like a random amount of gold, but like for something like this, you may just like, you don't get any gold. You get a starter kit and 10 gold.
Yeah, I had intended it to be not such a shit show, but it definitely was the thing that people got hung up the most with. And especially for one shot, I really struggled with feeling like I was limiting the players for a game where I was trying to make it so that if they had anything interesting in their inventory, it could come up and be useful. But brand new players have no fucking idea what to expect.
Yeah, I think if I did this again with this, I'd be like, okay, everyone gets a crawling kit because that's what I ended up recommending to everybody anyway. Right? It's just like you need one of these. You're playing this game. If you're not getting one of these because it's just good compared to buying the pieces individually.
Yeah, I think you're right though. Like we probably would just here's a crawling kit. Here, like what are you? You're a warrior. Here's like, do you want to be ranged or melee? Here's what you got. Do you want to be a thief? All the thieves are gonna pick the same shit. It's like you got a dagger.
Yeah. Well, you just choose a weapon.
Yeah, choose a weapon.
You pick a weapon, and then from the adventure gear, right, the extra stuff, you can take 2 more. Right, get 2 random things. Make sure you leave some empty slots because you need to carry treasure back, and that's like all the guidance I would give to just kind of start them with stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm probably gonna try redoing that and see if I can, cut away even more.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I think in general it was like quite smooth. That was like the only hang up. Right. And I think that's one of those things that, at least for me, whenever generating a character, it's like, okay, well, I really wanted like just a sword and board and like shield and longsword. But if I do that now, I cannot afford, I rolled poorly on my gold. So I don't get torches. Which is like, I hope my party has torches.
Fuck.
Because I'm not buying them. Right.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say with the character folio, I think you're spot on with that. Now, I'm also, I don't want to forget to ask you this. The adventure write-up, the little folio for each adventure, for usability for you as a GM, what was useful? What would you leave off? What do you think, about it?
I thought it was good. It was helpful, as a reference while running the game. Pretty much the map was the thing that I found myself always open to. And then like every now and then I would go back and look at something else, right? I'm like, okay, what's in, reference for what's in this room, whatever.
With the room references, I tried to make sure that it stuck to just a 2-page spread and it was as minimalistic as possible. Did you feel like there was enough description, not enough description, or what'd you feel about that?
No, I thought those were good. Basically, you gave me in each of the rooms the critical what's here, what's important, and then let me flavor like basically descriptions of the room, right? There's a kind of a breakdown of like, what's in the room, what's in the center of it, and what's remarkable about it or not. Why is it a room in this dungeon? Kind of, right? And I think, I did some stuff that was like fairly useless with some of those, like the descriptions. I'm like, oh yeah, there's like a star chart that when you get to the center of the room actually becomes like, 3-dimensional and you can kind of
that's cool.
see it. It doesn't really do anything, but it's just like a magical
it's
thing.
Vibes. It's vibes.
It's just vibes, right? But it's like the only thing else in here is the dead guy. but like this can't be the room for the dead guy because that's not why I was here, right? So this was a astrological thing, right?
Yeah, but I think that's really important because like having meaningless but cool stuff also keeps the players on their toes where they're like, is this important? Is this not important? Is this trapped? Is this not trapped? I don't fucking know.
Yeah, so all I did with it was basically it became, I think you had like some heraldry and like images of like birth and rebirth and that sort of thing in the top room. There was two rooms at the top, right, which was the altar and then the trapped treasure.
The immediate treasure room.
And basically, yeah, exactly. This is right here. Like, guys, why is it here? They're like, okay. Just another thing, get the veteran players like, nah, no way.
Yeah.
Get out of here. So, but because you had the room with the heraldry and the things described, then, in the constellation room in the bottom right, it's like, okay, yeah, these are, you can see the constellations of the deities in the room above it. And so there's like some kind of callback to the things they had found before. But that's really all it was. I thought the guide that you had for it was good. It was like what you needed, that format, right? So you find yourself flipping through pages, but probably I'd have those printed out.
Oh, yeah.
And then like in the DM screen. Right. So I don't have to like flip and reference. I'm just like, oh yeah, roommate.
Yeah.
And you've just got like a reference like kind of around. And the only reason to do that is to reduce, players waiting on you to tell them what's in the room. You always feel like you're in the hot seat there.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm always, and I get fucking flustered, like even on shit I've written and I've read, and I like think I have locked into my head.
Yeah.
As soon as I'm playing, and I'm like trying to describe the room, I will just start pulling shit out of my ass because I can't remember exactly what I wanted it to be. And so like the bullet points was mostly how I would use it. If I'm running it, I'm like, I'm not going to remember this stuff. I'm going to pick a vibe and I'm going to like be layering onto that vibe. So if I can remember one thing about this fucking room and I actually execute on it, then that's a fucking win. And then I assume other people have that experience, right? Like,
yeah, definitely. Like there's definitely moments, for me, personally running the game, I'm like always nervous. I've never actually run a Shadowdark game. I've played in them.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's the first time you ran it. I mean, it seems like it went really well.
I thought it was okay. Yeah, it went all right. Just knowing the kind of vibe of things, I think. But yeah, you get flustered. Like, remind me what the rule is, or how does that work? I think it's okay to ask the players because I'm like, and I was like, okay, and then I do cleaving strike, and I'm like, I don't know what that is. What does it do? And I think that's okay to ask the player, right? Like, and two, that's like I don't have to know. It's not like I don't have it indexed like I did with like my 5e class, and I'm like, yeah, I know exactly what it can and cannot do, and it's okay to let the players be the expert a little bit. It's a community. It's a community, storytelling experience, so that's all right. But even so, it's just like for me, half the time it's just like getting started, and I think whenever you are the DM, it's like sometimes you have to be willing to be like the silliest person at the table, for whatever reason. Everyone's looking at you and they're like, all right, so what? I don't know why, but the scouts had Russian accents. But once you start, it's supposed to be like, none of this makes sense culturally or whatever. It's like we've got a Egyptian, pyramid thing that we're descending down into. Town that we came from is Mikros, so we've got like this Greek theme. We've got like scouts with Russian accents, and I'm like, you know what? It's just a mishmash at this point, right? Like, who knows? Maybe they're from a nearby province or whatever, and it's like it doesn't matter.
No bullshit. That's the exact reason Greco had like a thick New York accent. When I was talking as Greco, I was just like, what's the most belligerent way I can sound right now? And it was like, New Yorker. Here we go.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Brooklyn. I think it's just one of those things where it's like, if for me, DMing, and one of the things that's difficult about it is being willing to do that, for the players to show up in that way, to do that. And it's hard because I'm a raging introvert. I'm this thing like, I don't do voices. I don't.
But when you do,
sometimes it's
you
fun.
do pretty good when you do it. And that's the thing, is like just letting the fuck go. I agree.
Yeah, you just have to let go, and you got to do it, right? And you're just like, but once you get started, And once you're halfway down the road, you're just like, oh, okay, we're here.
Exactly.
And this is happening and it's fine. And I think there was definitely at the beginning, one of the players, was just like laughing. And because, Adam being Adam, he gets, he just gets into the character and, he's like looking around very seriously at the table and like kind of doing he was like the one person who was like, I guess I'll be a priest because we're going to need it. But anyway, as he's doing this and we start doing the voices and the role playing, this person is like, they're laughing and they're obviously, it's not good natured. They're laughing at us. They're too cool and all stuff. And that feels bad. It's like a little humiliating, but
yeah, but that shit changes when the entire room is doing it then, like, and I think that shit does tend to happen until the person that's like having that realizes everyone else is like into this vibe. And if you're not, then you're the odd man out,
Yeah, well, they were dismissed and went to bed, so it was fine.
Okay.
They couldn't tolerate it, weren't ready, but it really there was no steps missed. It was fine. We just kind of get there, but that's difficult to deal with, right? You're starting thinking you're already like a ball of nerves, and someone was like, "This guy, what a loser," and you're like, "I know, but like you're here too, so what gives?"
No, I actually didn't know that had happened at the table. I feel like there's more to say, and it's like a deeper topic in general about the whole thing. I was gonna say one of the things that felt like 100% on point was the vibe from the room itself, right? Like we had 16 people together, and it didn't feel like there was any bucket of cold water thrown on anything. But it sounds like you may have had one player that didn't get it. And if they didn't get it and then they bowed out, then that is what it is, whatever. But
it is, but I don't take that personally, right? That's not a me thing.
Yeah, it's not you at all. You still had 7 or 8 people at the table that was like totally fucking here for it. I knew that it had all worked when we did the final ritual boss battle thing. And I still had everyone basically from my table comes over to your table and they're all still like, what are we doing? How do we win? What exactly is happening? They were all keyed in. Like everybody that I saw faces that were like they were concerned and they wanted to fucking win. And that felt really good because I don't know that I've successfully created something that pulled everybody in like that, It felt like they really wanted to know what was going to happen. They really gave a shit about it. And this was all just like something that was pulled out of my ass. So, pulled out of both of our asses combined. And then we made a final thing out of it.
Well, I think you're not giving yourself enough credit there. I mean, there was several weeks of preparation and talking about like the kind of where we wanted to end up at the end, right? So like,
true.
Yes, there was a lot of improvisation, missteps along the way or, changing things that were in the original plan. But I think that comes with these games. Like when have you successfully run a game with players and it all went according to your plan as the GM? Never. Like not for me. not once, not never, right? I was like, no, I really thought they would be down. Like I really thought these players would be down with giving the NPC that they escorted into here, like the item that they wanted, but instead they're going to murder them and take the item. And I was like, well,
the party said they were going to do this, and then I gave them the option to do it, and they didn't do it.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, 100%. I definitely felt like as much as could go the way that it was planned for went the way it could have been planned for. So just to run through like the final ritual real quick. Basically, we had 2 NPC wizard characters teleport both parties into this throne room, big-ass throne room, and there were columns and pillars, and all the bad guys were coming in waves from the south end of this room. The mechanic that was supposed to be introduced during both of the traps and the mini-adventures was diminishing pools, which is a cool mechanic where you have a number of D6s in the pool. You have to roll it and get 5s and 6s to get the die out of the pool, and then when the pool's empty, you complete whatever the thing is that you're working on. Really cool. And I wanted to introduce it with a smaller amount in both of the mini adventures while the characters like figured out the traps. Both parties ignored, like they bypassed the traps completely. So they never saw it. And then they get into the room and they're like, I was very explicit that like there's 4 spaces around this suspended witch queen, and there's a ritual that has to be completed. While the ritual is being completed, everyone else has to be defending the characters. And I was explicit, like you can sacrifice stuff, you can do things that are worthy that will take die out of the pool. There's 6 dice in this pool. You got to get them all out. Everybody seemed to get it and was on board almost immediately. And a quick side note, I started rolling with your badass like wormwood fucking dice tower. That thing is so sexy, and like I love the way that it sounds when dice go fucking down that thing. It was just smooth and awesome, and it was great.
The best thing about that is like it can be a completely inconsequential dice roll, and you do them. Everyone's like, "Yo, what's that?" You're like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
I had 2 or 3 players watched every roll that I put through that thing. And I was doing them all out in the open. And I was just like, I think some of the players, especially 1 or 2 of the new players, I think they had a look of surprise when I didn't pull any punches in that fight. Like after the first round, the Duke comes into the fucking room, breaks through the wall like the Kool-Aid man riding a fucking small dragon, and just starts laying out fucking blasts of fire every round with this fucking thing. Like there's no recharging. He's just like, this is what he's doing. He's got a spear and he's dragon fire. He immediately nukes Greco. Greco was like tanking 3 or 4 fucking Duke's men coming through the doors, and then the dragon just immediately destroys Greco. And then 2 or 3 of the players got really close to the dragon and they were down like almost immediately. And then I think Adam's character, one of the priests, was running, but had 30 feet of movement, but the room was huge. Like he was running back and forth between downed players trying to keep him up. And like usually in these kinds of games, like it's very difficult to like kill a bunch of players really quickly, but these guys were serving themselves up and just getting fucking blasted.
Yeah.
And they kept each other alive, which was great, but like it seemed dicey. There was a couple times where they rolled the whole pool. They got 3 dice immediately. And then after that, they couldn't get shit out. Like they kept rolling it and stuff wouldn't come out. One player sacrificed that scarab that you had given her.
That's right.
She sacrificed that and pulled one of the die out. We got down to 1 die, and Scotty rolled it, and he rolled like a 2. Yeah. And so like we had to do another full round before this shit got figured out. And I think there were 3 players on the ground when the players finally completed the ritual. And the whole time they're beating on the Duke, and the Duke is not actually taking any damage. Like I described it as he takes penetrating like visceral damage, but then his armor like snaps back into place. And especially like one of your players, Rob, he had just been wailing on this thing, rolling phenomenally. Like I think he did like 47, 48 points of damage.
Yeah, the entire night is what he had been doing. Basically, he's like, oh yeah, it's it's a pack of skeletons, and he's swinging and it was like 13 damage, and like all of it overflows to the other skeleton. Like, okay, well, yeah, they're just disassembling them.
So then the thing was, once the ritual was done, the witch queen revives. She combines the staff with the orb, and then she like disenchants him, and then he takes all the damage at once and just implodes like a fucking tin can.
Yeah.
And it was a really cool, epic ending. And I know everybody was like tired at this point, like they always are at the end of these games. But we had successfully completed 2-table, 8-person per table, double mini adventure into a finale boss fight, cinematic finale boss fight. And we got all that shit done between like 8 p.m. and I think midnight. I was like ecstatic. I felt great after that. It was so fucking fun.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Obviously the thing that happens whenever we do this is immediately after you're like, all right, when do I play more? When do I play next? We're lucky we get to play at somewhat regular intervals, right? A few dozen games a year, and it's great every time.
It's never enough. I want to play more. Well, should we wind down the conversation by thinking about what's next?
I guess I'm curious then, right? Between this experience and then like the big convention games that you're running, right? I think you mentioned earlier we're probably going to be doing in a couple weeks here another 12 plus player game in Indianapolis at Gen Con, right? Is like this large scale GMing, is this something that you are actively seeking to do more of, or is it just something that kind of naturally happens because of who we know and the general interest in playing?
I mean, that's a great question. I No, my preference, the answer is no. The preference would be to have a regular 5 to 6 player game that goes deep.
Right.
Like what I really want to be doing is I want to be running my own region hex map and like enticing a group of players that's regularly, even if it's not the same players, but it's like I want to try to do a little bit of a simulationist thing where it feels like there's a real world. There's time being kept. There's players are invested in the world. They're investing their in-game money and they're spending that money to like make larger projects happen. And there's real factions going back and forth and changing the landscape. Like I want to spin up a fantasy world and then have players affect it and have a story be told over a large scale. That's what I want to do, and that's kind of what I'm working on in general. I do consider myself rather fortunate to have the opportunity to run these ridiculous large player count games, just because we have a couple groups that we know, and they're open to trying these kinds of things.
Yeah.
And like the D&D thing is like, being like the nerd culture has just penetrated in all directions everywhere. So I've got people in other parts of my life that like I would never talk to about this stuff. And like if it comes up, like they trigger my trap card and I start talking to them about it. And then they talk about how they'd love to try playing sometime. Like if I get people like that, I will always try. And if the only game that I have here, like if I've got 10 players in a room and I'm like, who wants to play? And all 10 say yes, like I'm not going to fucking kick anybody out.
Right.
So it is a different game though, right? It's a different game. But my goal is to play the best version of that game at the player count. I think the player count is super important for like what's on the table and what's not on the table. And like you get good at what you practice or you get good at what you do. And I feel fortunate to have taken chances running these ridiculous player count games and fucked up enough over like 6-7 year period that I feel like I'm making less mistakes that slow things down, that make it more about what I'm trying to do and less about what the players are trying to do, to actually get this to a point where it's a collaborative story with a large group, which is, can be very difficult. Different personalities, different expectations,
Right.
like meeting all that stuff as best you can, moderating all that kind of stuff, and just having the table have a good time. Maybe an individual doesn't because they die, they have a shitty experience, whatever. But if the table has a good time, then I feel like it's successful.
Yeah, I think so. I think that makes sense. It's like really just the communal experience and doing it. That's just part of what makes it fun.
Yeah, I think this kind of thing offers an experience that just you can't really find anywhere else.
Yeah.
Well, what about you? What are you excited to play or try upcoming?
Very excited about Daggerheart and everything that has to offer. Right. I think it's going to be excellent. I'm really enjoying. There's a bit of a mini series going on showing it off. The Mercer's running the Age of Umbra stuff, which I think is great.
Is that good? I haven't watched it.
It's great. It's his own personal setting, which it's got the touchstones, the cultural touchstones, and everything that I like. Right, it's like horror and kingdom death and all that in an RPG, right? And it's by him himself. So I think that's great. I'd love to run a campaign in that. I've pitched you. I've been talking about this book that I've been working on as well, and so like it's a great setting for that. I don't know, super excited about that. But there's just so much to like about New System.
Yeah, I'm excited to let you run that and to be a part of that for sure. I've been working on a regional map for some time, a big ass fuck off hex map, and I've been reading like crazy. All the OSR stuff I can get my hands on, the knock books, the blogs on tape stuff, the Substack community. There's infinite stuff, but there is something about like these older school designs with BX, OD&D, where they had in the rules systems for handling pretty much everything. And so I want to make my own version of exploration options. I want to I've got an idea for a setting. I want to develop the tools to play in that setting, kind of like Dolman would, where like that dude and his party played for like 10 years and then turned it into a sellable product that was just like infinite adventure. I would love to do something like that. So I want to get back to running regular Shadowdark games in this kind of setting. It's taking me forever because I'm working on these other things too, but it is definitely still a goal where I want to like have the Discord server, have a conversation going with all the players that we know, and like try to get some player driven group run, like where players are like, okay, we know this is what's going on here. We want to play a session for like 3 to 4 hours on this date. And then we just play through it. And then when we're not playing, we do that thing where time kind of passes, but I want to have actionable, simple systems across the board. So I want factions and nations, and I want things happening here and there. I have, I always have bigger ambitions than I should, but I want to have it so like we start off the world with just basic Shadowdark classes, and then as you discover points on the map, you discover ways to unlock different classes. I want all that shit. How much of it I'll actually get in there, who knows? But that's really something I'm pushing for, and so I'm going to be bouncing between designing another mini adventure for this Gen Con so that we can run a game, and then fucking with this stuff, the Hexploration regional stuff, and then on the side of that is basically anything that we can produce with Goof and Grump. I want to keep that going. I love seeing this stuff like get out in the world, get used.
Well, I got a couple things I want to respond to that.
Yes, please.
The first is like, yeah, I'm super excited. Thinking River Zine, we've got the art coming in for that now, and it's shaping up. It meets my expectations, which were high to begin with. So I think that's excellent. Really excited about that coming out soon. And then I think it's interesting. You're talking about a campaign there, right? And a big one in Shadowdark. And I think it just reminded me of something that I probably a little late in the episode to pull it up now, but maybe we could do another deep dive into this. But in a recent,
we'll tease it.
Yeah, tease it. In a recent podcast, Kelsey was on. Pretty sure that's it. So Dungeon Master Diaries, right? They had Kelsey on, and she said explicitly, Shadowdark was designed to be a campaign game for it to be a high level experience, and furthermore, that it is not as lethal as people think, and it has this reputation for being the lethal game, right? And I think we definitely like played it that way. We're treated that way, and we've murdered characters, and we've had a few die to unfortunate rolls and other things. But I don't know. I think that's very interesting to hear that from the creator herself on this one, that it is not that, and that they have run year or multi-year campaigns with the same characters, which I think is very interesting. They have people reaching level 8, 9 and getting the higher level wizard spells are effectively gods, and you talk about that in D&D as one of the big flaws, right? Is you get to the level 20 cap and things are just so off the rails at that point. It's okay, well, you're basically all gods. So it's how do you want to do this before the thing starts?
I think we started to experience some of that when we were playing the last time we played. Character death seemed less on the table, or at least it was less likely to happen in a lot of cases. And I don't like to do save or die stuff. I know there's no saves in Shadowdark, but there's still checks, and I feel like we were figuring out a lot of nuanced stuff. I feel like Shadowdark is a great base system, and I love everything about it. I did feel like there was just a lot of stuff that still needed to be fleshed out, as far as like carousing was super simple. The overworld stuff, whereas I think I've also heard her say when she plays, most of her game is in the overworld, not in the dungeons.
Right.
But the Shadowdark system doesn't seem to have all of the stuff that you would want in order for the overworld to be as simple and straightforward as you'd want it. So I know she came out with the Western Reaches, and it's probably going to answer a lot of these questions, but I'm also really enjoying figuring out how I might answer those myself. You know what I mean? Like, right. The OSR stuff has this endless pool of stuff to draw from. The answer is usually just, create a system that works, that takes as long as it's not just the whim of the GM, and it's like there's some system, there's some reason, there's a risk behind the dice roll, there's a reason for having this effect, And the decision is not just the DM pulling it out of his ass. It's like, this is extrapolated out from me. This is a way that we do this in the world now. We establish that this is how it's done. And then it just becomes like we're all playing the game together. We're all discovering what's happening together too.
Yeah, I think so. So, I mean, that's, I guess, the kind of what I was getting at. You were talking about, returning to a campaign, that I'm interested now in the things that we've learned to see how that goes this time with the understanding that we have of how the game works. I think death is always on the table if you make bad choices, but provided you're playing reasonably, right, and you're keeping your torch on and you're doing the things that you should be, like, it becomes a little bit more.
And you've learned when to run away. Again, another topic, and we're way late. But in the system that aren't explicitly described are the fact that there is reaction rolls and the morale system. Those two things make it so that 80-90% of your interactions should not just be straight up fights to the death. Unless you're hunting down undead or dealing with some really fucking like asshole faction, you're supposed to have this inherent baked in ability to like wiggle and find ways that are non-violent to get past your problems,
Right. Yeah, there's that whole article that I've been writing, the combat as a failed state, which I think came from some of this thing. And so it's interesting, right? And I think coming from D&D and playing Shadowdark for the first time, that was not the mentality that I had when
I'm as a GM too.
Shadowdark for the first time, right? And so, but now I'm like, well, true, because most of the experience comes from me getting, like, exploring and getting things out of this dungeon, bringing them back and doing downtime activities.
And that's the kind of thing I want to expound on. I want to make it so that if your players are spending money on like incentive projects or like expanding the infrastructure of the village into another town over, like, you get experience for that. It takes time, it takes money. It's a lot more interesting than rolling on a carousing table, right?
Right.
Like,
you
can still do all that shit, but this is just makes it. I want to try to invest players in the world. Also, like, fucking around with retainers and like henchmen and stuff. Like, if you guys could have a torchbearer, like, maybe that kind of fudges some of the rules for Shadowdark, but I think it'd be super cool to try. I want to fucking try it. And like, having those connections to these NPCs that start out as useless but become something. Well, even when we were playing 5e, Adam had those two like henchmen characters. There was no mechanics behind it. It was just he wanted henchmen characters. They were like super interesting, and they were like they did things around town.
It added stuff for us to do when we were back in town, right? In the sessions where it was about shopping and catching up with, like, it doesn't matter. Like, there was now something interesting to do. Like, progress had been made while we were out, maybe, hopefully. And then what happened with it, and checking in on it and following up, and consequences from things that weren't necessarily player actions, but like indirectly player actions.
Yes. And that's the kind of thing that I always have had ambitions to like be effective and have them there. But in a lot of games, if you don't have a simple, straightforward system that you can it becomes too much. Like, I want to have these like interesting systems and like benefits from a stronghold or whatever the hell locations. But if it requires entirely too much admin to perform as a single like GM, it's just not going to happen. So that kind of stuff has always fallen off. And I that's what I'm loving about learning these OSR system is like everything is snappy, everything's abstracted, everything is straightforward to the point and has a function. And these are the things that I'm trying to build out tools to do these kinds of things. All right. Well, I think we've definitely we've met our time quota. We've got plenty of good stuff here. Loved talking about this with you tonight. But yeah, we did a thing. It was awesome. Like, I honestly, this is a really awesome memory that I have having done this thing. We all were hanging out for the weekend. We picked Friday night and we had just, people were down, people were into it. We had an adventure where, I really want to get more of the players' perspectives. Like, I want to hear what they did and thought about the game. I know some of the veteran players that would bitch if they had the chance. They actually really enjoyed themselves. So I look forward to rehashing this in a couple of weeks at Gen Con and, asking people what they thought and then making them do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super happy to have participated and to have been there for it. So, yeah, as I said, just looking forward to the next one and playing again.
This has been Alexander Zakis and James Ekdahl of the Goof and Grump podcast. Find more from us at goofandgrump.com and additional writing and materials at glyphandgrok.substack.com and grumpcraft.substack.com. Thank you for listening.